Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in to International TEFL Academy's Facebook Live on online teaching. I am so excited to talk to you today about the world of online teaching. My name is Erin. I am a Student Affairs Advisor here at International TEFL Academy, ITA, and like I said, online teaching is becoming a huge market when it comes to learning different languages. You can learn so many different languages, but the fastest growing is actually teaching English online. So that is what we are going to talk about today during our Facebook Live. If you guys have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat box, but we have something really cool planned. You guys are going to be meeting two International TEFL Academy alumna, both Kim and Anna, as well as a representative from a really big organization for teaching English online, which I'll introduce in just a little bit. But like I said, if you guys have any questions, let us know, and I'm gonna go ahead and start with our first alumna, Kim Jackson. She has a really cool story. She's been teaching abroad in Ecuador and South Korea, and now she is a teacher teaching English online. Kim?
Hey! Yeah, so I taught in Ecuador and then moved to South Korea. And then when I left South Korea, I didn't really know where I wanted to go. I kind of wanted to be mobile and just be able to go with the flow and, you know, travel to different countries as I've wanted. So I started teaching English online as a way to do that. And I wasn't stuck in a certain country, and now I'm back home in grad school and I'm able to teach online and pay my bills while also in school. So it's been pretty great.
That is awesome. And that is something that is so great about teaching English online. Obviously, this can be a full-time job, but this can also be a side hustle. For those of you, this is the side hustle generation. So if you're looking to save money for your student loans or for a big trip, that's why I teach English online. I'm actually saving for a big trip. You know, there's so many opportunities to do this. And another alumna that we have is actually Anna. She taught in Spain. So Anna, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So hi, I'm Anna. I am from Atlanta, Georgia. And yeah, I just got back about 2 weeks ago from a 2-year stint doing the Auxiliares de Conversación program, which you may have heard of, in Madrid. And I loved it. And I was also at the same time tutoring in the evenings, and I was doing VIPKid on my 3-day weekends off. So I was doing about 15 hours a week there. And I'm back in Atlanta now, and I'm going to start my master's degree here in Georgia next month, and so I'm really excited that I have this that I can do like before class every morning and help pay off my loans that are incoming.
That is awesome. So fantastic. I didn't realize that you were also going to be going to school, so I told you this is a great opportunity. And as Anna mentioned, she works for VIPKid, so I'm really excited to introduce you to one of our premier partners, VIPKid. They are based in Beijing, China, and they have a platform to teach English to young children over in China. So talk about distance learning. All right, so I'm really excited to introduce Zach at VIPKid. They are probably one of the largest companies out there for teaching English. Hey, Zach.
Hi, everybody. My name is Zach Nelson. I work in business development at VIPKid, particularly on the teacher recruiting side. A little bit about my background. I actually taught in China for 2 years, and so I spent time in China teaching all different grade levels. I was at a university, but I spent time teaching kids as well, anywhere from 3 years old to adults that wanted to get better at English. So I did it in person in China, and then I came back to the US, started working in tech, and now I'm with VIPKid.
That is awesome. Well, we are so excited to have you, obviously, Zach, but as well as our alumnus, Kim and Anna. Thank you guys for taking the time. They're all over the US right now, so I'm so glad that you guys were able to tune in. We're excited to ask you some questions, learn a little bit more about VIPKid. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Zach, will you tell us a little bit more about VIPKid, when it started, the mission, things like that?
Sure, absolutely. So we started in about 2013, so still relatively young, but as everybody knows, this space is still young as well. So we were still pretty early getting on the ship when all this left. So for us, started in Beijing. Our CEO, Cindy Lee, kind of started at the platform. She had been teaching English for a lot of her life, and she kind of started out the model where I think they had a teacher in one room, and the room next door they had a student. And they tried to see, like, would it be successful if they could have a, you know, would it work online? And they built out the model, and, you know, I think, like, there was one moment where somebody in China, somebody who's kind of well known, tweeted something about their Chinese student taking this VIPKid class, and it just took off. And so it's been a roller coaster since then. And fast forward 5 years, and now VIPKid has 300,000 to 400,000 students and more than 40,000 teachers in North America. And most of that is all one-to-one teaching online.
Wow, that is amazing. I didn't realize that's actually how it started, you know, testing it out. That was always one of my biggest fears when I learned about online teaching, was like, how is that possible? How do you control students? How can they hear or see? And it's just amazing how this kind of, you know, world comes together. And so I'm sure Kim and Anna, you can kind of comment on this. Can you talk a little bit, Zach, as well, about the platform that you guys use? Like, I'm sure we get a lot of questions like, how is this possible? Because that's what I went through when I was going through this a year ago.
I can speak to that if you want. Okay, well, actually, it's funny because I've been teaching since December 2016, so I've seen a lot of changes that have happened. When I started, there were 3,000 teachers, I think, and like 30,000 students or something, so it's like multiplied exponentially. But the platform, it's pretty cool. So you see a screen, you have the PowerPoint slide that you just upload, and you don't have to pick. You press upload, and the one that you need is right there for you, unless it's a trial where you might have to switch between. And then you see the student's face and you see your face below. And then on the right side, you have a chat box, which is a great tool, especially for the older kids, when you need to explain something or when they don't know a word and you want to type it out. Instead of having to write it with your mouse, you can type it out for them and they can see it. And now there's also a new app that they came out with for computers that looks a little bit different, where it's actually, your faces are kind of raised. And so it's a little more natural because it's closer to where your video camera actually records. And I really like that too. I think the pen writes a little better in there. So that's basically how it works.
That is awesome. I love that. And exactly, I just started using the app myself, and it does make things a little bit easier. So we know you can do it on a computer. Do any of you work on maybe an iPad?
I'm only computer as well. I feel like that's so old school too now. But it's actually really cool because in addition to that, like, Anna, I feel like we're the same person because I am also from Atlanta and I also started like December of 2016. But they also just added the interactive classes, which are pretty cool. I've only taught a few of those because unfortunately a lot of my students aren't on it, but it's really cool because you can do like a lot of drag and drop and move objects around. So it just makes it makes it much more interactive for the students. They usually enjoy it. Sometimes they go a little crazy of moving everything around on the screen, but they're at least enjoying class and having fun. So it's just a good way to keep the students engaged as well.
100%. I'm not going to lie, the first interactive class I had, I was dragging everything around and testing it out because I was having a little bit too much fun. Yeah. So I definitely understand that the kids are having that too. And that's great. And so, Kim, can you tell me what made you interested in teaching English online and then choosing VIPKid?
So mainly I just wanted to be mobile. I didn't want to be stuck in one place. And I knew when I left South Korea, I probably would be traveling like max 6 months and then going back home. So I knew it'd be really hard to find another job with that short amount of time frame. A lot of places want at least a 6-month commitment, and I just didn't know if I could give that. And I didn't. It's not fair to the students, in my opinion, to just go there for a little bit and leave. So I started looking into teaching online, and a girl that I knew posted something on Facebook about VIPKid because she was also a teacher. And at the time, that was the only teaching online company that I had ever heard of and had ever seen an ad for. And I just thought, you know, I should go ahead and apply. Like, I have a few months left in Korea. They say it takes a few months to build up your schedule. So then by the time I leave Korea and this is my only income, like, I should have a full schedule. And I was able to maintain that while I was gone. And, you know, I'm on my 4th contract now and am able to pay my rent and all my bills for grad school. So clearly that was a good decision on my part.
Yes, definitely. And for those of you who are just tuning in, I don't know if you heard her, but she actually was able to travel while still teaching, which is really another cool perk that you can do. We have quite a few teachers who are traveling throughout South America or Asia and teaching for VIPKid, which is pretty cool. Not something that was going on when I was teaching. I wish that would have been really awesome. So fantastic. So kind of the same question for you, Anna. What made you choose to teach English online, and why VIPKid?
Yeah, so I actually, when I graduated from college, I already kind of knew that I was going to Spain. I had been accepted already, but after doing some research, I found that if you want to travel, you kind of need to make a little more money than they just pay you in this job, because it's only 4 days a week. It's 16 hours in Madrid. So I was looking kind of for other opportunities. And I think same thing, I saw it on a Facebook post. I think in one of the groups for the auxiliares, someone had posted their referral link and said how great it was and how well it would fit with the job. And I looked into it, and at that time, that was almost 2 years ago, there was still like a minimum time requirement, and I didn't think I could swing that, so I didn't apply then. But then when I got to Spain and realized that I could meet that requirement, I think it was like 7.5 hours a week you had to open slots. I decided to apply. And then also after I arrived in Spain, I had a friend who was doing it and told me about it. And she was the one whose referral link I used. She helped coach me through the process, which I highly recommend to find a friend or acquaintance to help you with that, because the process is always changing. I don't even coach people anymore on referrals because I don't even know what the system's like now. It's been so long since I've done it. But if you find someone who's recently hired, I think that's a really great way to do it. And same as Kim said, it was the only company on my radar at the time, and I think it was probably the only one that was like getting traction at the time. Now I know there's a lot of other ones, but at that point, a year and a half ago, a little more, that was the only one. So, and I've had a great time with it.
Fantastic. That's so great to hear. It sounds like you guys are very similar, and I agree. I wish I had this. So I did a very similar program in France that you did, the auxiliaries program, and I was just twiddling my thumbs for hours because I only worked 12 hours a week. So I really wish I had this back then. But you guys both kind of mentioned how things are really changing, and that is what is happening in the world of English teaching. Things are always changing. So I'm not sure, Zach, if you can tell us a little bit more about like how things have changed, especially since while you've been there, and some of the hopes and dreams for VIPKid in the future.
Oh, sure. And so I do want to touch on one thing about traveling abroad. I met actually a couple, I think a married couple, and they travel the globe. They quite literally teach for VIPKid. They spend like 3 months in Spain at an Airbnb, and then they spend like 3 months somewhere else, and they just are constantly updating their schedules to reflect the local time zones. But yeah, traveling the globe with VIPKid, I thought that was one of my favorite stories, because that's something, obviously, when I lived in China, I loved going all over the place. As far as changes in the space, I mean, it's really just amazing. We've just seen explosive growth. I mean, as not just in China, but across the globe, the interest in English and the demand for English learning has just dramatically increased. And I think some of the things for us is now that the platform of VIPKid has been proven out, that it works. Now it's just kind of a matter of where do we want to grow from here? Is it specializing in subjects? Is it adding, age ranges? Like what are different possibilities for us as a company, but also to do it so that we continue to respect our teacher communities and our students on both sides, and constantly updating curriculum. So that's another thing for us too, is, it's the whole process, right? It's everything has to continually improve. And I think for us being one of the first companies in this space, it's nice to be on the cutting edge of that. So for us, it's all about innovation, adding things for transparency as a company, and working with our teachers, listening to our teachers, and all of that. So for us, that's kind of the exciting part about it, is no one's really done this before, because it is a new space. And as we see here on this panel, I mean, like, our teacher community is definitely one of our greatest strengths as a company. And so as long as we continue to work with the people in our teaching community, listening to them, making edits and things like that to our program, updating slides when teachers say, this slide is terrible, I can't, it's impossible to teach it, or this PowerPoint's too long, but listening to our teachers and having people be heard is extremely important to us. And those are things that we're all working on moving forward.
Definitely. And I think that's probably something, I'm sure, Kim, you can attest to. Sometimes in the world of curriculum, it is very hard for things to get changed. I remember using like the same book that was from like the 70s, in my classrooms when I was like in France and in Asia. And so the fact that you do have these implementations where, hey, you know, I have a question about this, or I think this could be better, that you're constantly updating the curriculum and having new classes. I mean, that was something that we talked about before. Anna, you mentioned that this summer they introduced a bunch of new classes that people can teach. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, so you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm fairly certain there's one. They usually have like a summer camp and a winter camp that run during the months that they're on holidays, just to kind of, my impression is to give an initiative for them to take more classes that are unique to only a certain months, certain set of months. So right now there's one that's called Proper Pronunciation, which if I'm not mistaken, that is the summer camp this summer, where it's just an extra course that students can take, and it's all about pronunciation. So there's always a focus. Today I taught one, it was about the OA sound and the TH sound, which are, especially the TH sound is a huge one. That's a challenge for a lot of Chinese students. And it just drills that over and over again. Those classes also include some intonation practice. So asking questions and moving your intonation up, and commands that move your intonation down, and things like that. That you do practice pronunciation in the normal courses, but this is really a way for parents to like drill their kids in these subjects. And then there's also one that's a phonics course, which, if I'm not mistaken, is kind of an ongoing thing that won't just be in the summer. That has to do with just getting more drilling on just the phonics part. For the lower levels, there's always a phonics section of the class, but it's usually the focus is on, you know, another topic like animals, or let's see, like the home, things like that. But this course specifically has to do with focusing on phonics, practicing what the letters sound like, and when they're together, what they sound like, and really drilling that. So.
That's great. And like I said, it's a lot of fun being able to see these new classes. You get kind of into the groove with your major course classes, which is what they call the regular curriculum. And then in the summer and the winter, they like to spice things up by adding new classes. And what's really cool actually is Kim is a mentor for VIPKid. So after you've been there for a while, you have opportunities to kind of assist other teachers going through the hiring process. Kim, can you kind of walk us through what it's like to be a mentor?
Yeah, I really enjoy it because I'm not gonna lie, it's really fun acting like a 5-year-old. And you can like channel what your students do and like use that. So you give a very good representation to these applicants of what a class is really like. So once you get through, or once you fill out the application, and I mean, when Anna and I applied, like you had one option. When you applied, like you had to do the live demo, and now there's so many different options. I know there's like fast pass classes, there's a recorded demo, there's a live demo, there's probably other options that I don't even know about. But once you get through that, then you go into the mock classes. So there's currently 2 mock classes, and the applicants schedule a time that works for them, which is really good for me, because when you're in the US and don't want to wake up at 3 in the morning to teach, you get to do these during the day or at night. So it's really good for that schedule. And so I go in there and I just get to act like the kid and give them a real idea of what a class is like, and see if they can adapt and adjust and how they teach. Do they use TPR? Are they using props? Do they have like the right amount of energy? Are they being supportive? Are they correcting the student? Like all of these things that we really want our teachers to be like in a real classroom, we get to test them out and make sure that they do it. Obviously, we're not there to make things difficult for them. We just want to make sure that they can handle a real student. And then we get to give them feedback, which is really cool. And there are some teachers out there that are super original and creative and come up with these ideas that then I get to steal and use in my classroom with my kids. So it's a really cool role that I get to do.
That is awesome. And for those of you who are just tuning in, we are International TEFL Academy, and we are talking to 2 of our alumni who teach for VIPKid. And we actually have a representative from VIPKid itself, who is one of the leading platforms when it comes to teaching English online. If you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat box. We will be getting to them. I know we've had some questions. But the question that Kim was just talking about was being like a mock mentor. So kind of walking through the process of applying for VIPKid is kind of similar for a lot of online teaching companies. She mentioned something about a demo or an interview. I'm not sure, Anna, if you want to kind of talk about what you did.
Sure. So, I mean, I'll see if I can remember, but yes, as Kim said, there was only one option. It was just a live mock class. So first you filled out your kind of basic information just on an online form. And then if that proved you had the minimum requirements, which at that point were a bachelor's degree, and I think at that point there was like a number of hours you had to have experience in. I'm not exactly sure what that number is now, but you had to have the bachelor's degree in that and be North American. And then if you met all that, then they would contact you for the initial interview. And the interview was, I think it was very short. You had a sample of slides that you prepared, and it was about 10 minutes of teaching. And then the rest of that time, I think it went up to 30 minutes, was spent them just asking you questions about your experience and things like that. If you made it past that point, which is not a guarantee at that, or was not a guarantee, you would do a full 25-minute class, and the mock class mentor would give you some tips. And then I think I even had to do a second one. At that point, it was like they would score you, and if you got above a certain score, you didn't have to do it again. And then if there was room for improvement, they asked you to do a second one before you started teaching. So I did 2 full 25-minute classes, but I appreciated that because I got to get so much good feedback directly from a person who knew about the company before I even started teaching a real student. So that was the process that I went through.
And I can speak to this as well in my wheelhouse here. And Cam, I'll pass off to you here in a second, being a mock class mentor. But yeah, it's the same thing. So the basic qualifications are the same. And at present, it's bachelor's degree in any field. It's eligibility to teach in North America, and some teaching experience equaling more than a year. And we're pretty flexible with that, where it can be mentoring, coaching, TA at university, Sunday school teacher. I don't know, however you want to get to that year mark. And then from there, yes, there's an interview, and as Kim alluded to, you can do your self-recording, or you can interview with someone in person. And then from there, if that's a pass, then you go to a practicum, where you have some like development materials, like how to use TPR, how to get better with the system, what to look out for, those kinds of things. And after that, that's when you go to the mock class. And I'm glad you said that, because what I've heard from some mock class mentors is, even that first class, if you've never done online teaching, and the first time you're plopped in front of someone and it's like, be successful, here's the deck, even that can be a great learning moment before doing the mock class, the second mock class, before having a little bit more experience. But I mean, yeah, Kim, please talk to your experience with that, of what you've seen. But I know for the first time, just to sit down and be like, okay, do it, it's difficult, or, so to have, and that's for us, that's an opportunity, right, where we could say, maybe the first time, how can we, if someone doesn't pass a certain level, how can we reach back out to try to help them? Is it our fault? Are we not providing the materials to help them be successful? How can we make those edits on our side to make sure that, that we're trying to help people along to become new teachers for us?
Yeah, one thing I've seen, and I also did 2 mock classes, so it's definitely not a bad thing. I think a lot of people want to pass on the first try, and I get that. Like, we all want to succeed on the first try, right? But if you have 2 mock classes, you're getting 2 opportunities to interact with 2 different teachers that have different backgrounds, different opinions, different ways of doing things. So you're getting a lot of different feedback. As mentors, we have gone through an application process as well. So we do know how to give feedback, but everyone has different things that they are good at and what they like. So just to have that opportunity to hear from 2 different people is such a blessing that I think a lot of people don't quite understand. And something I tell a lot of my applicants when they're in the first mock class is, this is completely different. We don't expect perfection by any means. So this is your opportunity to come in here, use this platform that you've never used before, unless you were a previous VIPKid teacher. And a lot of people don't quite understand that, oh, wait, I can draw on the screen, or they're having trouble advancing slides. And you get those technical issues out of the way. So then when you get to mock 2 or in a real classroom, you're more comfortable with it. So the first mock class, I kind of see it as more of a practice run of getting used to what we want you to be like, instead of expecting perfection. And I think that's something that a lot of people miss. And I really want applicants to understand that we do not want you to be perfect, and we do not expect it.
Oh man, I think that is such good advice. I remember when I was going through the process, I had no idea what I was doing. I was so nervous. I was watching YouTube videos left and right that I started to forget like what my own persona was. And I remember that my first mock class mentor was just like, hey, take a second, take a few breaths. I can see that you're really nervous. And she's like, this is just going to be fun. And that's what did it for me. So having this kind of advice, like, it's okay. Like, even if you don't get everything perfectly, I didn't finish the slides. All right. And I still got through. So it's definitely possible. So I think really good advice. Thanks, guys. Awesome. So kind of switching gears, we have some really great questions that are coming through via Facebook right now. And one is, you know, the background. Obviously, you need to have an educational background when it comes to teaching because, you know, you want to make sure that it's keeping these students engaged and things like that. So when setting up a background from your home, how do you do it? I know both of you are in the States right now. I don't know, Anna, how do you set up your classroom?
So this is my classroom right now, to be honest. And it's because I'm not at my house. I'm actually house sitting for someone. And the beautiful thing about VIPKid is I can still teach here. They have good internet. So I can still teach, but I'm house sitting for my aunt and I'm watching her dog. So I just wrote my name up here just so they can see it visually. If it was my house, I would put something else up. I have a map, but I don't want to like put pins into their wall. So, and I'm moving in about a month. So when I go move to my new house, I will set up something like a map. I know some teachers go like all out and have this space that's dedicated for their teaching. I do not have the funds nor the place to do that. So I will probably just have a setup in the corner of my room that'll have something on the simpler side. But I know some people do like, you know, putting their name in different colors and banners and a whiteboard and all that. So it's kind of up to you, but you should have something behind you.
Perfect. And what about you, Kim? Especially being as a mentor, that's something that you look for.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of different things. I'm kind of like Anna, just very basic. This is not my background. I am doing my internship, so I'm at work right now. But at home, I have like a watercolor map that I bought off Amazon for I think like $15. So like it does not have to be extravagant at all. And I just have that behind me. So there's something, you know, kind of cute, educational, whatever the case may be. But if you want to have like this big thing with more of like a brick and mortar classroom type environment, that's completely cool, but it's not necessary. It's not expected. And I think a lot of people assume that they have to spend all of this money to create this background and or they're not, you know, going to get hired. And that's not the case at all. You just have to have something back there. And honestly, you can go to like the dollar section of Target and find stuff, the dollar store. I mean, you can make it super cheap if you look for it too.
Definitely. All my stuff is from like Amazon or the dollar store because I have literally the space from here's my bed, here's my classroom, and then here's my closet door. So I hang everything up there, have a whiteboard. It's actually really, really simple and easy. And some people who are really tech savvy can have digital backgrounds. So Kim, I'm going to call on you since you have that beautiful green screen behind you.
Yeah. So I use Manicam a lot because I'm poor and I don't have space for props. So you can have like digital props. So I don't really have any like cool backgrounds. I'm sorry guys, but there's this border that's kind of cool. So you can like throw this in there if you want to, like you're in the mouth of an animal. I haven't done that to a student. I don't know how they would respond, but in Manicam, you can definitely put different backgrounds in there, whatever you want. And also, this is my favorite. Like the animal units are my favorite because that's just who I am. And so you can do things like this, like a pig. What else do I have? I have a bulldog.
Oh, look at that.
Or if you want to be a super VIP kid, you can just come and get Dino. So there's like a lot of things you can do without even having a physical prop, which is really cool. I know there's other programs on there. I have a Mac, so I think Manicam only works with Macs. I don't think some of the other programs do. Actually, I don't know. But there's a lot of opportunities for backgrounds too. Like if you're constantly moving around, then that's a really good option. I know some people, there's one girl who's also a mentor and she works out of an RV. Like they just drive around the country and live in an RV. And so she uses Manicam and she makes all these videos. Like if you're in the VIPKid Facebook groups. There's probably a group for everything. And she just does tutorials and like tells you how to do all of this stuff. So that's a really cool option for a background as well.
Yeah, and that points on perfectly for those. I know we had a question about how do you travel around? What do you do for your background? What do you do for props? And so what did you do, Kim, when you were traveling around Southeast Asia?
Super basic. I had my map background, which folds, it's a cloth, so it folds up really well and you can stick it in a backpack. I have a puppet and flashcards. Like letter flashcards. I had actually it wasn't even a whiteboard. I used a old picture frame, and with the glass, you just put a sheet of paper in there and you can write on the glass with dry erase markers. So you can use that as a whiteboard as well. That's most of what I traveled with. And then also I would stay at Airbnbs, and I always could find things in the Airbnb to use as a prop as well.
That's great. And I know that's something that I do when I'm traveling is I do little printables. You know, there's so many cool characters that are in the VIPKid curriculum that you can just print out, or even if you just want to talk about food, you can print out food quickly that I just hold up for the camera. So when you're traveling, it's pretty easy. And that is something, Zach, that, you know, maybe you can comment on, is something that VIPKid promotes, the fact that, you know, you can travel while still teaching. It's very flexible as long as you have the requirements for teaching with the internet, things like that. Can you comment on that?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, we encourage that, and that's one of the biggest strengths that we have as a company is the flexibility. You know, not having required hours and things like that. So that's something for us that we really, you know, want to promote. I think, you know, to touch on the classroom background and the props and all of those things, Erin, as you mentioned earlier, you know, a lot of our teachers who are becoming teachers, they're watching these YouTube videos. And of course, the YouTube videos are great and we love it, but sometimes we can find that can be a little intimidating because the teacher on the YouTube videos, you know, they have all these pictures everywhere and they're like bright and bubbly. And you're like, well, it's like you want to be like, I don't know if that's me, but I have my own personality when I teach and things like that. So we want to make sure, you know, as you guys all said, you know, it doesn't take things that are complicated. You know, we want to make sure each teacher keeps their own personality and their own style inside of the classroom as well. But, you know, definitely it doesn't have to be something complicated. It can be pretty simple, just as long as you have the basic requirements and, you know, different, particularly fast internet and things that you can find. But, you know, a little creativity goes a pretty long way. So that's good. And yeah, I mean, like as Kim said, just having a puppet, a whiteboard, a fold-out map. I mean, it doesn't take too much to, I guess, have Wi-Fi or have VIPKid will travel. I don't know.
Love it. Love it. That should be the new slogan. No. Great. And we got another question in talking about time zones. Obviously, as we mentioned before, VIPKid is based in Beijing. So you are teaching in China times, which can mean either really early mornings or late nights. So can we kind of talk about your schedules, both Anna and Kim, and then especially as you were traveling both in Madrid and Southeast Asia, how did you switch going from one time zone to the other?
Yeah, so I miss the Madrid time zone dearly right now because in Madrid, it was only 6 hours different from China, and then it was 7 during the time change because China doesn't do that. So the peak hours, they call them, were about 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. or 10 to 3, or 11 to 4 and 10 to 3, I think. And then now I'm in the Eastern time zone, so I wake up at 5:30 every morning to teach from 6 to 10. And then since it's the summer, it's a 12-hour time difference, but the kids aren't in school. So you can also get evening bookings in the US. So I also teach from 9 to 11 p.m. right now. I know teachers that are trying to make a lot of money and who stay up the entire night and teach. I could never do that personally, but if you want to do that during the summer or on the weekends throughout the year, you could totally do that because it's like basically the day and the night are flipped. I prefer to sleep a few hours and then like stay up the whole day and take a nap. But that's the difference. And then, so as I said, yeah, on the weekends, Saturday and Sunday, or it would be Friday and Saturday night during the whole year, you could do night hours because it's the morning in China. But currently, since it's summer, I've been able to get booked throughout the week in those night hours.
Yeah, I know. I was in South Korea, so I was like an hour ahead of Beijing time, which was so nice. And it's really easy because actually you just go onto the portal and you put in your time zone and it automatically switches your calendar over to that. So you don't have to do calculations. Just make sure you know what time zone you're in. And also when you're going to travel, make sure you switch the time zone if you're going to be in a different one before you open your schedule, because I've made that mistake a few times. And so back in the East Coast, I would teach 6 to 9 in the morning, and I'm in Texas now, so I'm in Central Time. So unfortunately, I get up at 4:45 to teach at 5:30 because I have to be at work at 8. So that's been a little tough. But I actually tried when I first came home. I tried to teach the night time. I was like, oh, I can just go through the night. That'll be fine. And I think I opened my schedule like 10 to 4 or some ridiculous time like that. And I did it once and realized that was the worst idea ever, because I also ended up getting like cancellations and no-shows at like 3 in the morning. And I just wanted to go to sleep so bad. So like that is not for me either. I'm much more of a morning person. So I will be fine like waking up at 4 and teaching. And like Anna said, just take a nap. But honestly, like you're either a night person or a morning person. So the schedule kind of can accommodate you. Some people really like teaching at night and some people really like the morning. So that is kind of nice that you can choose either one.
Yeah, I never thought that. When at first I started, it said, okay, you're going to get up at 5:30 in the morning, which I don't think I'd ever gotten up at 5:30 in the morning, except for me to catch a flight. So I was like, oh no, I hope I can do this, since I was a night person. Now things have kind of changed. I do get up early. I still teach a little bit in the evenings too, now that it's summer, but it is kind of flexible that I have that option to be like, okay, actually I'm doing something tonight. I want to sleep in tomorrow, but I'll book night classes. You know, it is kind of nice having that flexibility with the schedule, especially around like the holidays and things like that when the schedules change, which it just makes things a little bit easier. So definitely understand. I cannot pull all-nighters. I tip my hats off to all those people who can do that. I couldn't even do it in college. I tried once and I failed miserably. So my hat's off to a lot of those teachers who do that. Great. So kind of switching gears to technology. Zach, can you kind of tell us what is required to work for VIPKid, you know, for the tech aspects? We have a lot of questions being asked about that currently.
Sure. I mean, and you know, the present teachers, you can help assist on this, on what works for you and what's best. But you know, what we like to say is when you're starting off with online teaching, for us, it's kind of at least, you know, some kind of computer, some kind of camera, and you have to have fast Wi-Fi. And after that, kind of the investment, we hope, you know, you're not continually having to pay for something, right? You're not continually having to take your car for an oil change or something like that. Right? Once you have this set up, like the cost change there, I do know, and you guys can touch on this too, like some teachers prefer like specific lighting, to add more lighting to them, or better cameras, or different things like that. But I mean, from a tech side for the company, I mean, we just say at least internet fast enough where you could do some kind of either, you know, some kind of online, you know, as we are talking right now, internet fast enough for that, for some kind of video chat, and then cameras, lighting as you please, and that's about it from the company side. But I mean, what works best for you guys? I'd be curious. I mean, I see nice headphones from Anna. I don't know if those are used in class. Let us know. And
yeah, I do use this, and I really like it because you can tell when the kids aren't wearing headphones. And if we were both not wearing headphones, it would be a complete disaster. I usually tell my students to wear headphones if they don't have them on immediately. And sometimes they don't, sometimes they do, but there can be a lot of echo. And I think VIPKid does make you wear headphones, if I'm not mistaken, or they really, really encourage it because of that feedback. I'm more comfortable with this kind than with earbuds, but the earbuds, like the Apple ones with the microphone, probably work fine too. And I use a Mac like Kim. I personally love Macs because I've never had issues with viruses, or I know I've heard of teachers who they log on to start teaching and their computer restarts with an update on Microsoft, and Macs don't do that. So I personally am a Mac person, but I think you can use, like he said, any kind of computer with a decent webcam and a good internet connection. And if you don't have a good internet connection, you always run the risk of getting a teacher IT finish type. which means you won't get paid for that class. And if you have too many of those, your account might be suspended until you fix those issues. So that's always something. I also use my phone as a backup hotspot. So if you have data, I had a SIM card that I had in Spain that was from a Spanish company, and then I have an iPhone. So if ever, you know, your internet goes out or something like that, of course it doesn't work as well as home-based internet, but in a pinch, that's a really great thing to have as a backup. I'm a very anxious person, so kind of to ease my mind about that, I always had that hotspot near me as a backup just in case.
Yeah, I'm actually on a hotspot right now. So yeah, like especially if you're traveling around, you have to have that, because I remember I was in like Bali and the internet is notoriously horrible there. And it just was not even close to being strong enough, even though the Airbnb said it was. And so I just got my hotspot. I mean, when you travel around, you just buy a SIM card in the airport and you're never going to pay more than like $10 for it. At least if you're in Southeast Asia, you're not going to. And I just had that on there and was able to switch over to a hotspot in, you know, like 30 seconds. So you don't have a teacher IT, you don't have a problem with that. And hopefully, you know, you just send a message to the firemen like, I'm switching to hotspot, don't like cancel my class, I'm not leaving, I'm coming back. And as long as you're, you know, open with them and tell them, then they always will give you that benefit and give you the time to do it. So there's that. I have seen setups in classrooms that are like, look like movie studios, and I don't know how these people do it. I don't, like, honestly, I have a just normal lamp that I will like shine at the wall so it like bounces off the wall back at me, and that lighting really helps. Also, Manicam, you can change the lighting, which is super nice when like I'm teaching mock classes during the day and the sun is fluctuating. It can really mess with you. So that's another great thing about Manicam, is I can make it pretend like I'm in the brightness, or I can dim it down a little bit. And so like it doesn't have to be complicated. Once again, I don't teach in earbuds anymore. I actually do have a headset, but I can definitely confirm what Anna said. Like if the student doesn't have a headset, you definitely hear an echo, and it's so annoying when you're trying to teach and then 5 seconds later what you said comes back at you. It's really hard to keep a straight train of thought and to actually teach a class. And the kids don't hear it, so they don't think it's a problem. Mom doesn't think it's a problem. So yes, but if you don't have a headset and your student hears your echo, you better believe it's going to be your problem, and it will be a teacher IT. So a headset is really not negotiable, in my opinion.
Definitely. I think you guys hit the nail on the head. I always use a headset for that very problem. I laugh when I watch playbacks of my classes when there's that echo and you hear it like 5-10 seconds later. I'm like, oh, that's what I sound like, but okay, you know, things like that. But perfect. And something that I think, Kim, you mentioned was the firemen. So kind of touching on the resources, Zach, what are some of the resources and support that VIPKid provides for their teachers?
Sure. So we have our, you know, the teacher onboarding stuff, and as far as like the portal where teachers live and, you know, they sign up for classes, I'll you know, pivot to Anna and Kim here. But as far as it goes for us, like the different kind of resources that we want to provide to our teachers, it's constantly changing. I would say we're starting to promote things like, I'll give one example, like we've started things with brand ambassadors, where with these YouTube people that are on YouTube, we're kind of trying to bring it in-house, where, you know, instead of just a lot of different people saying things like, oh, I think this is how VIPKid does this, or I think this is how, but bringing that in-house so we can kind of help promote the right information, right? And as some of you mentioned, like, you know, even the process of the application process changes, right? And so how can we communicate that with one singular voice to make sure that new applicants know which video, you know, is this the correct thing? Is it branded from VIPKid? Are they supporting this messaging? And then also like different kind of things that we provide for our teachers. I know something exciting for us that we've been doing is we're starting to do events to bring it more on a localized level. So for one, we just had a journey in Salt Lake City, and we're about to have one in Dallas, but having events like that. And then another thing too, we have different teacher meetups. The community is very active. So beyond just like Facebook groups and things like that where teachers can communicate, but also having like groups inside of cities across the US, Canada, where teachers are actually meeting at locations, going out for dinner, going for movies, going bowling, things like that, where there's a transfer of knowledge. Because again, our teacher community is the strongest thing we have. I mean, and even me sitting here, I can't, the three people here on the panel are way better to talk to any teacher who's looking to get with VIPKid than I could ever be, because they've spent more time on the platform. And so for us, we really know that's important for us, and that's one of our strengths is harnessing kind of the teacher community and bringing everyone together and helping facilitate that. And then that's obviously growing all of our teachers individually as well.
Definitely.
I'll point to you guys and what that looks like for you for sure.
Yeah, keep going, Anna.
Yeah, sure.
Oh,
so
go
I was going to say, for other resources, like Kim mentioned, we have the Firemen, who are the people that kind of help you when you're in the class. So in your classroom, another thing that I forgot to mention, another feature of that is a little button that says Contact Firemen. And when you click it, there's a drop-down list of some, what's the word? Normal issues you could have. So there's, I can't hear the student can't hear me, I can't see the student can't hear me, unstable audio video, or a student behavior problem. And these are all things you can contact the firemen about to help you on the spot in class. And they'll come and they'll communicate with you through that chat box, and it's obvious who they are because it says system message and then it says to teacher and it's in English, so it's all of that. If need be, they'll send a message in Chinese to a student. For example, I think it was last night I was communicating with the firemen back and forth because a student had a really, really bad connection. And I tried to tell the student, you know, sit closer to the router, because 9 times out of 10, that's the issue, is they're really far away from the router, and so it's kind of spotty. But the firemen came to my rescue, and they sent a message in Chinese that explained, you know, the network's really unstable, please move closer to the router, and like a minute later they did it. So we have that resource there to help us. You don't have to worry too much about those kinds of tech problems, because they can come into the classroom and adjust your sound or your video and the students at the same time to kind of make sure that it evens out.
Yeah, in addition to the firemen, there's also another tab for like FAQs kind of. And so it'll have like, I can't hear you, please go get your mom, or something like that. And it's written in English and translated in Chinese, so you can just copy and paste that in there, because the firemen do get really busy, and sometimes you are kind of waiting a little bit for them to respond. And so if it's something simple like that, instead of just sitting there and staring at your student because you can't hear them and it's just super awkward for both of you, you can just go and copy and paste that in there, and that way the student can read it. Because if you have a beginner level student, they might not be able to understand it in English. So that's another option that's really helpful in the classroom.
Definitely. I always have another browser open for either Google Translate or Baidu Translate. So just in case either firemen can't come or it's a simple fix, I quickly just, you know, translate something like, hey, you know, get close to the router, or your sound is not working, things like that. And it's just a really easy fix. That's what's nice about having everything at your fingertips when you're teaching English online, which kind of brings us full circle with this about teaching English online. I don't think that this is going anywhere anytime soon. So Zach, where do you see VIPKid in the next 5 years?
Yeah, I kind of touched on it in the beginning, but like for us, it's proving out the platform, and now it could be different geographies, specializing in specific subjects, expanding the age range. Kind of the sky's the limit, and that's kind of an exciting thing for us as a company, is exploring all of those new ideas. I mean, I'll give you even an example of, if we can track like facial movements, we can find out when a student is happy or when a student is sad, and that could help us even better optimize, what classes work, what classes don't work, or how can we collect all of the times a student was happy with a teacher, and then combine those all together so a teacher can see the times where in a class he or she like made all these students smile, and collected videos like that. But yeah, I think for us it really is the sky's the limit. It's exciting. The platform's proven out, and then even VIPKid as a larger company, we have connections with groups that are teaching Chinese in America and different things like that. So kind of, yeah, for us, it's really fun time to, innovate and continue to build on the platform. So it's the curriculum, age, geography, it's all there.
Perfect. I can't wait to see, because as you said, the sky's the limit. Things are getting really exciting. So just have like a last few minute things before I let you guys go. I know that you have to get on with your days, go back to work. I guess, Kim, any last minute tips and advice that you'd have for someone who wants to apply to teach English online?
Yeah, I personally, this was like one of the best decisions. I originally applied thinking I was going to do this for 6 months and then like find something else to do, and obviously that didn't happen. And so this is a really good opportunity of you make your own schedule. Like for me, if I like now that the students are more on vacation, and because I'm working 40 hours a week now, which is a really hard transition, I have really decreased my schedule. But like last week, I just kind of didn't have a lot of classes. So I opened up a class on a Sunday, short notice, it got booked immediately. So you have that ability to be like, hold on a second, like, I want to go do this in 2 weeks. I want to go out of town. So let me just open a few classes, and usually you'll get it booked. So it's a great opportunity to make extra money on the side. You're in complete control of your schedule. If you don't want to work, you just don't open your schedule, and it's not a problem. You know, it doesn't have to get approved by a boss or anything like that. You can do it anywhere. In fact, one time I was going to class, I opened the camera and my student opens the camera and I look up and I'm looking up at like the light on a dentist chair. And my student was in the chair taking class. And I'm like, okay. She's like, hold on 1 minute. And then she ran out into the lobby, and I guess her sister was next at the dentist. And so we had class in the lobby. So you can seriously do this anywhere, and there's not many jobs like that. So it's a really good opportunity.
Yeah.
Like that.
My craziest place I've ever taught a student was Disneyland, Shanghai. So she was at Disneyland, and I opened the camera. She was outside. I heard this kind of fantastical music and these like weird trees behind her. And I was like, where are you? And she was old enough to be like, I'm at Disneyland. And I was like, oh gosh, this is going to be terrible. She had to leave her family and go on rides to have class, but actually she did a really great job. So I've taught kids in restaurants. I've taught kids at Disneyland. Yeah, in the car, you never really know.
Man, I've only had the car, so that's pretty impressive, the car in the park. But wow. What about for you, Zach? Do you have any tips and advice for those who are wanting to teach English online for VIPKid?
I would say, just look at all the resources, explore it, see if it's something for you, like watch some of the demo classes, do all that. It's, it's all about information, right? And the thing for us is we just don't want anyone to feel intimidated by it. If you have any interest in online teaching, we want to make it as smooth as possible for you to do it, enjoy it, and, make money from it and whatever position you're in. So I would say, particularly, as Anna said and Kim said, and we've been saying that, if you know someone who's doing it, reach out to them. Get some help. That'll make it less of a barrier, when you're thinking, I've never done this before, I don't know where to get started, but reach out, and we want to make it as smooth as possible and fun for everyone.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Can I just add one more thing? This is just because of like applicants that I see. If you are watching a video on YouTube of a teacher teaching a class or giving tips on how to do the mock classes, that's great advice, but still be true to yourself. Don't try to mimic a teacher that you see, because if that's not your personality, it's really obvious. And we don't want you to be a clone. We actually call them like kind of like Stepford applicants when you're just trying to mimic something that you see. And when you see like 5 people in a row doing the same thing, like it's just not original. So like be true to yourself. Like if you think that there's a really good way to teach this that you didn't see on YouTube, like give it a shot and do it, because we want to see your personality and how you can adjust to a student and how you would naturally teach, not if you can replicate something that you saw, because every student's different. So what works for one student is definitely not going to work for the next. And that's really what we want to see, is like your ability to be yourself and to adjust.
Oh, I think that is fantastic advice to end on. But before I say thank you and goodbye, I do want to give a shout out. We actually have 2 ITA ambassadors who are doing Instagram takeovers on our channel who actually work for VIPKid. ITA ambassador Ryan Cook, who is in Prague, will have his on Thursday, July 26th. And then Nicola will have hers on July 30th. She travels all around the world. She's currently, I think, in Thailand. So if you guys want to kind of get a day in the life of an ITA student who teaches for VIPKid, I highly recommend watching and joining our Instagram at INTTEFL Academy. All right. Zach, Kim, Anna, thank you guys so much for taking the time out of your days. This was so informative, so fun. I think our audience got a lot out of this. But thank you guys again so much. It was such a pleasure.
Of course. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Thank you guys. You have a great day. And everyone else, take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.